Welcome back to the Ascent podcast. I'm your host, Geet Gera, founder of AI Ascent Partners, where we help healthcare, wellness, and aesthetic practices use AI and automation to scale smarter, not just harder. Today's guest is one of the most fascinating physician entrepreneurs I've had the pleasure of speaking with. He has been in clinical practice since 1978. That's nearly 5 decades of building, adapting, and leading. He pioneered an accountable care organization with a Medicare contrast in 2012, and he's now running one of Beverly Hills' premier anti-aging and longevity practices, Rejuvalife Vitality Institute on Wilshire Boulevard. What I love about this conversation is that Dr. Berger doesn't just talk about AI, he is already living it. He is an early adopter, a self educator, and someone who has learned some hard business lessons that most practice owners are still making today. Dr. Andre Berger, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Pleasure to be here. And thank you for that introduction. I've had a unique opportunity, as you pointed out, to practice medicine basically across about 4 decades. Sounds like a long time, but it goes by so fast. It feels like yesterday when I started. But I began in emergency medicine, and I then transitioned into age management, anti-aging, regenerative medicine, aesthetics, and now the vernacular is longevity, but that's kind of what I do. And going through that, I guess what I learned is that healthcare is undergoing, I would say, one of the most profound transformations in history. It's
Mm,
certainly very different today than when I first graduated and started practice.
I'm sure.
One main reason is patients today aren't simply seeking treatment for disease. No, they're seeking something else. They want optimization. They want prevention. They want
Mm,
vitality. They're looking for longevity. But at the same time, as you kind of alluded to, we have technology, we have AI and automation, which are really reshaping
right.
practices operate and how our patients are discovering their healthcare providers. So I think the providers who are going to thrive going forward in the next decade, they're going to be the ones who really successfully combine both, exceptional clinical care, but also the innovation, the entrepreneurship, the technology, and of course the human connection. So that's kind of a summary of what I'm thinking about the state of my medical world today.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's a different time altogether in terms of the all the research on the science side and then the technology doing its magic evolution that we are seeing right now for AI and automation.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like an art. I started my career in traditional medicine, and that's when healthcare looked very different than
Mhm.
it does today.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I witnessed healthcare evolve from more of a reactive disease
Mhm.
management process to a proactive health optimization concept.
Mhm.
And I think, and for me anyway, I recognized early on that, most chronic diseases are preventable and age-related decline is something you can modify. And that's why that was a turning point for me in that, whereas when I started back in, over 40 years ago, emergency medicine taught me how to save lives, but longevity medicine has taught me how to improve lives.
Yeah.
That's where I'm focused right now.
Mhm. Yeah, that's like awesome in its own way. So, Dr. Andre, you have been in medicine since like 1978, and that's a landscape that has completely transformed multiple times. Walk me through the evolution from your early clinical years to building a Medicare ACO to now running a longevity practice in Beverly Hills. What's the through line for you?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could help people. Now you can do it one at a time by, being in a medical practice, or you can do it in terms of trying to help a whole population of people, of patients, improve their health status. I think my personal practice is one at a time situation. In that situation, I'm able to, as I've morphed and transformed into more age management medicine, anti-aging medicine, now longevity medicine, I am able to spend one-on-one time with patients, helping them improve their lives. But when I did the Accountable Care Organization, my focus was on trying to help a large population of patients improve their lives. Why? Because I was trying to help their providers, which I managed in this Accountable Care Organization, help their providers focus on being more efficient, but also at the same time providing a higher quality of care. So the two together, this efficiency improvement and the quality of care improvement, was designed to save and reduce the costs of unnecessary care, but at the same time improve the overall quality of care, but not just by, subjectively believing that's happening, but by using very specific metrics to measure and observe statistically what actually is going on and make adjustments and improve based upon those metrics. I like that concept where using, some technology to actually monitor the outcomes of care, how that care can be improved. I do now do the same thing. Well, I've always been doing, even when I ran the ACO, I still maintained my medical practice, believe it or not. And at that time, I was doing both. I was helping the population, but I was also helping people one-on-one. Now I'm more focused back on helping individuals improve the quality of their life. So yeah, so that's kind of the concept of what I went through. I did get to see, especially when I was doing the Accountable Care Organization, I saw this in a very large scale personally, and that was the idea of preventable chronic disease. I saw that repeatedly in a large population of the patients. It's one thing to kind of read about it and read the papers and read the articles and read the literature, but it's another thing to actually be personally involved in seeing that on a large scale. So, after a point in time, there is a certain frustration in terms of the idea of treating consequences rather than treating the underlying causes of chronic disease. So that inspired me to continue to try and move upstream in healthcare. So shift towards anti-aging, age management, medicine, and then as we learn more and we had more, shall we say, ways of measuring, and we had more treatment options. That has now morphed into what is being called longevity medicine, and that's becoming kind of more mainstream. And I kind of, you know, just evolved from anti-aging and age management now to more of a longevity medicine kind of concept. But we're really dealing with the same thing, except, medicine, the half-life of medicine is very short, and we're evolving our thinking because we're learning more. And of course, that's a wonderful thing. I think when I entered anti-aging medicine, many people thought it was like fringe medicine. But again, today, longevity medicine is probably one of the fastest growing sectors in all of healthcare, because it includes.
The most evolving science as well right now, where all the research is going on.
Exactly. I mean, but it includes so many things that we kind of understand, but the knowledge base has grown tremendously. For example, hormone optimization, preventative medicine, functional diagnostics have hugely expanded and improved. The whole area of regenerative medicine, which is a brand new frontier, a wonderful thing, the thing that I'm so excited about, that's now on the forefront of our expanding ability to
What
provide longevity medicine. And then the other thing is the idea of personalized medicine that, we now are able to think a little differently and personalize medicine.
tailored plan for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. One time it was considered unconventional, but now it seems to be the fastest growing sector. So I think that's kind of an entrepreneurial lesson, if you will. Innovation always looks very crazy at the beginning. Okay.
Mm.
But, you know, and the market usually changes before academia changes, you know. I mean, even when I was practicing earlier on, people were still asking about these things. They were asking for prevention. They wanted better
Right.
energies. They
Right.
wanted cognitive optimization. They wanted to age healthier. They would love to have had regenerative therapies. This was before conventional medicine embraced any of these concepts. So this is an idea that the market led, not academic medicine. Now academic medicine has had to kind of figure out that yes, this is something we need to address and we need to do it in the right way. So I think that's it's an important thing. No, the other thing is, for me anyway, I was never trained to think like the CEO. I was trained to diagnose disease, but I wasn't really trained to build an organization.
That's what I wanted to ask. Like in 2003, you made a deliberate choice in shifting from wellness towards anti-aging in cosmetics. What drove that decision? Was it clinical curiosity, business opportunity, or something personal that you found?
I think what's important is you need to understand certain things. And in the beginning, I didn't understand because nobody understood it in the context of medicine. I didn't understand marketing from a medical perspective because in those days it didn't really exist. It was disdained upon to market. Oh my God, you're advertising? No, what's wrong with you? I'm going to call the medical board, you know? And physicians didn't understand operations. They just want to see a patient and do what they do. They didn't want to understand how you operate a business. And a medical practice is a business. It could be a small business, it could be a larger business, but it's a business. Doctors are not trained for that. They're not trained how to build teams. They're not trained how to deal with the financial aspects of it or the technology of it, which is today, oh my God, fundamental. And really, they're not trained in leadership in terms of, an organization. So in order to be successful, there has to be some pivot. They've got to augment their skill set, you know, to go beyond just diagnosing disease, but to have some understanding. I'm not saying being an expert, but at least have a good understanding of this so that they can delegate these things with confidence because they also do have an understanding of it. I mean, if you can't build a successful business, you can't help as many patients. That's the rule. So if you want to help a lot of people, you have to know how to create a successful business. That was my thinking. That was my
Mm.
impetus. Okay. So that's why the business of aesthetic and longevity medicine, was something I wanted to kind of focus on to 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 help more people, more patients. And I think
Mm.
what the first thing I understood was a big misconception. Okay. And that is that aesthetics and longevity are luxury industries. And that's not true. The reality is, you know, and I see this, patients aren't buying procedures. What are they really buying? Okay. They're buying confidence. They're buying vitality. They're buying performance. They're buying health span. They're buying a improved quality of life. Okay.
Mm.
Those are not luxury items. Those are
Mm.
common human desires. And
Mm.
they have an emotional basis too. So, 20 years ago, and which is maybe halfway from when I started, where patients were asking, "Hey, can you make me look younger?" But today, they're not asking me that anymore. They're asking me, "Can you help me age slower?" Different, big
Yeah.
different conversation, right?
Different perspective.
I think that's the key to what makes practices successful today. It's
Mm.
outcomes over procedures. The old
Correct.
model was you sell procedures. Procedures, you could think of
Mm.
them as commodities, okay?
Yes.
So, and that's obviously still going on. That's still a significant part of what's happening in the marketplace because we're in a transitionary phase right now. So we haven't given up the old concept. That's it. And we haven't fully implemented the new concept, which is basically delivering transformations. So what's a
Mm.
transformation? Transformation is something like, for example, okay, weight loss is a transformation, hormone optimization is a transformation, skin rejuvenation, enhancing cognitive function, improving metabolic health. Those are results, and patients care about those things. So again, it's all about now replacing the old model of selling procedures to the new model, delivering transformations. I think that's a very important part
Right.
of my journey. I understood that, and I basically leaned into that and continue to try and lean into that more and more as heavily as I can.
You've rightly said that how the times has changed and how transformation makes it look so different than just selling the procedures.
Yeah, and the other thing that I learned, which really helped me, is that the most valuable asset in any practice, and certainly in mine, it wasn't my technology. It was trust. It was building trust. Patients, why do patients stay with me? It's because I make them feel heard. I make them feel understood. I make them feel cared for. It's not because of a specific laser or a device. No, it's because of those things. That's why they stay in the practice. So, that's my advice. If you do those things, you'll have patients that will be lifetime. Okay.
Right.
I think that's important. In the old days means when I practiced traditional medicine, I can say that because of all the years I've been doing this. You realize that a traditional healthcare, it's episodic. It's episodic. But longevity medicine is continuous. Wow. I mean, that's just a major paradigm shift of thinking, which requires a paradigm shift of approach.
Yes.
Now, patients need monitoring. Patients need coaching. They need optimization, and they need ongoing support, which is very different from traditional healthcare, which was episodic. One of the things that is helpful there is the whole idea of membership. Membership models, which I think are very important, are really transforming medicine in many ways because they support those patient needs I just talked about. They lend to creating better outcomes, better retention, certainly more predictable revenue, which is nice to have. But it's part of building this whole idea of trust and stronger physician patient relationships. So I think that's another important thing that I learned. I could tell you a lot of mistakes I've made that physicians should not be making, but if they don't make these mistakes, they'll do much better. I try to be everything to everybody. I think the future belongs to specialists.
So in our pre-conversation, you mentioned like when you're talking about the mistakes that something that every owner need to hear that some of your biggest lessons came from mistakes. You talked about
Oh yeah.
chasing retention, hiring before fixing systems, ignoring financial metrics, and underpricing. Can you walk our audience through those? Because I think most providers
Right,
are making at least
absolutely.
one of those right.
Absolutely. I can tell you, for me, I made for me, the three biggest mistakes that I made that I fixed, I had to fix. And fixing them turned everything around. Okay. Mistake number one, trying to be everything to everybody. Okay. No, that doesn't work anymore today. Okay. Why? Because medicine has evolved and become much more complex. There's just, I mean, the 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 breadth of diagnostic and therapeutic options and possibilities is staggering compared to what it was even when I started. The half-life of medical knowledge is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So everything, you thought even 2 years ago was correct is not so necessarily true anymore because there's more information. So the future, I think, belongs to specialists. And the more you figure out where your specialty lies, like for me, I figured out where mine lies and focus on the better off you're going to be because it just can't be, there's just too much information. It's just too much. So you got to narrow it down. That's mistake number one. I think that's important. All right. The second one is ignoring marketing. I at the beginning, everybody was saying, build it and they will come. You heard that line. Yep, build it and they will come. No, that doesn't happen. If patients don't know you exist and they don't know exactly what you do, they're not going to benefit from your expertise. So, certainly, I think that's a mistake I learned and I fixed that. And, that really helped tremendously. But now I think the other one, which, I think is important, especially today, is underinvesting in systems. Underinvesting in systems. A lot of practices, may have great doctors, but unfortunately, they also have weak infrastructure. So the opposite of that is much more scalable. So that includes, and the infrastructure I'm talking about is infrastructure in terms of operations and infrastructure in terms of technology, especially today. If you want to be very successful and competitive, you got to make that investment. I learned that. At the beginning, I didn't, and then I realized I needed to. I corrected that mistake. To me, those are the biggest three mistakes that
Mm.
I can and share with you from my experience. I think automation, AI, is somehow falls into the latter, the last thing.
Interesting,
I don't know.
exciting, and caring and opportunity as well. So everything at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah, because listen, it's hard to understand. It's really difficult to understand if you're just looking at what's going on,
Yeah.
what's hype and what's reality. Okay,
Yeah.
right now I think we're in the
So
internet in 1995 phase of AI. Remember that? Were you around in '95 and saw
mm,
what happened with the internet? Same idea,
yeah,
same thing is happening today, right? A lot of excitement, a lot of confusion, a lot of opportunity. Okay, so that's what I think is really important to, come to grips with inside a modern practice.
I'll come
So I
to
think,
that. Yes, sir. I was saying I will come to the automation and AI part, in a bit. Before that, you mentioned something about the discovery that, people need to know that you exist. So I just wanted
yes,
to ask, like, one shift we are now, I'm seeing across the practices I work with, and I'm curious by whether you are seeing it too, is that patients are not Googling anymore. They're asking Chat GPT, Perplexity, or their phone's AI assistant. And even though they're asking Google, Google is also applying the AI assistant to send the response back to,
right.
things like the best med spa near
That's
me.
true. Yeah.
So they're pulling
Because
from different
AI,
sources, citation, authoritative content. So Rejuvalife is showing up in those AI-driven searches. Are you tracking that right now?
yes, we are tracking that, and it's very important. And but it's really a dilemma in many ways. I think this gets back to the idea of what AI is really doing well and what it's not doing so well. Okay. So let's talk about that. Okay. I think AI is really great for certain things. Wonderful. It's not great for what you just mentioned, but I'll discuss that in a minute. It's great
Okay.
for things like content creation. Very good. It helps, it helps generate things like blogs or social posts or patient education, newsletters, video scripts, things like that. It really dramatically can increase your content production. But the limiting factor is that the physician really still needs to provide the expertise and the oversight. Sometimes that's being a little bit neglected. Okay. I think the other thing it does really well with is things like answering frequently asked questions, scheduling follow-ups and outreach via text messages, emails, phone calls, etc. It also does a very good job now of qualifying leads. So I think that gets you faster responses. It gets you better patient experience. It also gets you actually quite a bit of potentially reduced staff workload. So can make your practice much more efficient and release your staff to work on other aspects of the practice that may need more attention or reduce some expenses. And I think it's also really good for this kind of administrative efficiency because, frankly, with AI transcription, you can definitely reduce your documentation burden.
Right.
Uh, it can take over a tremendous number of administrative tasks and automate them, and it just makes workflow more efficient. So this, I think, may be one of the biggest opportunities in medicine. But here's the problem. And this has to do with being a source for referral. First of all, AI today does one thing well. It can give you facts, and the facts are good, they're robust, and they're accurate. But it's very hard to trust with regards to opinion. Okay, there's a lot of bogus opinions coming from AI. It tells you sometimes what you want to hear, or it's influenced by non-objective. It's influenced by non-facts, even though that's what it does best. So I think you got to really be careful in trusting some of that. Some of that. Unfortunately, we're at this place where it's just very hard to control because you ask yourself, like, so how are people going to determine who to trust? Okay. Now, AI is a very lazy way of getting, some direction, which you're putting your trust in, which probably you shouldn't be putting all your trust in. It's not there yet, you know? So I think this is unfortunately a double-edged sword, a real problem. It's an opportunity for consumers to find a shortcut, which may or may not be their best shortcut. This is the way I see it. Uh, Healthcare still is human. Okay. Patients shouldn't choose doctors solely based on information. They need to choose them based on trust, based on connection, based on confidence. That's hard to get from the opinion of an AI agent today. I think that will potentially change in the future. I think that will improve. But there's a lot of context in medicine. There's a lot of nuance in medicine. Yes, there's experience. You can document experience. Those are facts, but you can't always document wisdom. So I think AI has its role, but I think we need to be cautious in accepting all of those, shall we say, recommendations as being, you know, correct. So that's my concern. I think
Mm.
AI can augment, but it's not going to replace great physicians, just as it's not quite ready
Yeah, I
yet.
definitely. Yeah, I don't think that
Give
replacement.
the proper recommendation. Okay,
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
and I agree with you. Like replacement of physician or human is not really the purpose of AI. It's definitely to augment, provide support, and do things faster to offload the repetitive tasks so that you create more room for the human elements. So
Right,
that's
right.
where
And I think
is the right usage for it. But in terms of discovery, I would say that previously it was an SEO that used to help discovering a website or a provider, and now it will be most likely the AI system that will help discover you going forward, and the trend is going towards that. And
right.
you told me that you have been using AI for phone reception and patient communication for a while now, automated booking, SMS reminder, follow ups. At a time when most practices are still debating whether to use AI, you are already deploying it. What pushed you past the skepticism stage when most of your peers are still hesitating? And what are your findings based on that?
Well, I mean, I'm using AI where I believe it does a good job, and I already kind of listed those areas or talked about that. Examples would be, let's say, automated patient education. I think that's very valuable. AI assisted, remember the word assisted, content generation. I think that's very, very valuable. I think the lead nurturing systems do a really good job. So that helps you identify and attract more qualified leads based upon the services and your positioning. I really think it helps to automate the patient journey, which I think
Mm,
is important. But what's very important is I think AI integrating into your CRM is really creates a tremendous amount of efficiency. And I think that's a very important
mm,
development. So it does provide a lot of personalized communication pathways, which is really what we want, personalized medicine. You can use it even further personalize things because you can do things you just don't have the human capacity to do. And AI can help you do that. So the goal for me was to allow me to and the staff to spend more time doing what only humans can do,
mm.
uh,
Right.
and allow AI for what it can
To
do well
offload the
enough.
task that can be
Yeah, to
offloaded.
do that. Yeah. Like if I was buying a new car, I would take it for a test drive, right? So I did the same thing here. I tried it out and I did the test drive and I
See
said,
what's the
oh,
best you get out of it.
yeah, I love this car. I'm going to buy this one, because it's got all the bells and whistles that for my practice. That's what I suggest you do. You know, try it out, take it for a test drive, and see how it can affect your practice. But it needs to be affecting your practice based upon your own individual and unique situation and needs. So in a way, you know, one shoe doesn't fit everybody as far as AI and automation. That's the other
Agree.
thing. So the biggest mistake that I think practices can make is buying technology without a strategy. Okay. I mean,
Mm.
I think technology basically amplifies the systems, but it doesn't not fix broken systems. So first, you got to make sure you got a system going that's not broken, and then take your AI and
Elevate it.
use
Use
that
it
and
to elevate.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the key thing there.
And so you mentioned what's worked for you. What is it that you found using in AI frustrating or unfinished or imperfect that you say we shouldn't be using it in that manner? So
Shouldn't be using it. Well, I mean, I wouldn't use it for, giving medical advice. I wouldn't use it for, diagnosing problems. Don't use, here's what I would say. Don't
no.
use, don't use it for anything that's based on an opinion, okay?
Mm.
Based on analysis, okay? You can use it, on the sidelines and see what it has to say, but it's not something you can just, you know, get an answer and use that answer. You have to really review that answer and make sure you understand that answer and double, triple check that that's a, likely the correct answer. And you'll
Mm.
find much of the time it's not. But so I say use it for, don't use it for anything that's just about facts. Just
Mm.
about, use it for education because education is not opinion. Use it for content generation. That's not opinion. Use
Mm.
it for the lead nurturing. That's not opinion for
Mm.
patient journey automation. That's not opinion. For
Mm.
CRM integration, that's not it. Opinion.
Mm.
And it helps you to have personalized communication pathways that really are augmenting your system. So that's where you use it. I wouldn't use it for anything else yet.
Okay.
It's going to be expanded. We're going to be able to use it for many more use cases, many more, kind of needs and opportunities to develop. But it's evolving and it's not ready to do everything for everybody at this point. But in my
Mm.
opinion, that's what it's good for, and everything else, not so much.
You also mentioned, Dr. Andrew, that standardizing workflow in longevity and wellness medicine is almost a never ending challenge because the protocols, products, and medications are constantly evolving. How are you thinking about using AI to bring consistency to that without losing the personalized care model that defines Rejuvalife?
Well, you can't. There is no good model that doesn't personalize the treatment to the individual situation. And so AI cannot be a doctor. Not ready for that. They can give you facts, and you can ask it questions that are going to recite back. I think accurate facts that probably often, certainly when it comes to things like dosing and certain things that you may want to utilize with regards to treatment. You got to double check some of these facts. I mean, I try to understand how it works in that regard. And what I found is it's not always accurate. Okay, which is scary because some people have gotten to the point where they're just using it like blind faith. It's just stupid because it's not ready for that. On the other hand, it's valuable in terms of what I said. So I think for personalized medicine in terms of longevity, including diagnosis and therapy, it can help creating some of these guidelines and protocols. It can help, but at the end of the day, that's got to be reviewed, supervised, customized, and adjusted by the physician.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're looking for big time trouble.
Yeah, I think documentation, training automation, and protocol management is a part which could probably be offloaded. And then wherever you need to have an opinion or a medical person expertise that need to be given to the doctor or
Correct.
specialist.
Correct. Correct. So,
You have been in this space long enough to see multiple technology waves come up and go. EHR adoption in 2010s, then social media marketing, telehealth. In your view, what does the AI transformation of aesthetics and longevity medicine look like over the next 5 years?
well, I think first of all, we're moving from lifespan to health span medicine. So that's what's going to become mainstream. The idea of health span medicine, which is really the foundation of longevity medicine. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I think there's going to be a further growth and actually explosion of personalized medicine. And that's because of increased reliance on genomics, on biomarkers, on wearable devices, which provide some continuous monitoring. Those things are going to drive individualized care. And I think what AI is going to become is like invisible infrastructure, kind of like electricity. Every practice is going to use it, and most patients won't notice it. I see that in the future. And I think consumer driven healthcare, which we've really seen tremendously influence our healthcare system, is just going to continue to accelerate because patients are going to increasingly pay for the things I mentioned that are the crux of it. That's like prevention, optimization, longevity, aesthetic medicine. That's because traditional medicine systems are really not designed to provide those services. I think that the most success in the next 5 years, the most successful practices are really going to become media companies. Doctors educate effectively at a scale are going to build trust. They're going to build reach. They're going to build authority. They're going to build influence far beyond their local geography. And that I think we're going to see really expand in the next 5 years. I think if I had to summarize the future of medicine in one sentence, I would say we're moving from treating disease to optimizing human potential. I mean, the providers who embrace innovation, that leverage technology intelligently, of course, and build trust at scale and remain, like a laser beam focused on patient outcomes, they're going to define our next generation of healthcare. I mean, despite all the advances in AI and automation, the heart of medicine, in my view, remains unchanged. Patients want a trusted guide. Now, I think the technology is going to change how we deliver the care, but trust is always
That
going to
is
be
the constant. That is the one thing always remains there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the future doesn't belong. You ask me what's going to happen. The future does not belong to physicians who compete with AI. No, it belongs to physicians who learn how to use AI to become more human, more accessible, and even more impactful than they ever were before. That's my closing remark.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And one thing I would ask is that Rejuvalife is located in Beverly Hills, arguably the most sophisticated and demanding aesthetic markets in the world. What does that environment teach you about premium positioning and patient expectation that practices in other markets could learn from?
I think I summarized it in my closing message. It taught me those things. If you're in a very competitive market, you have to listen to the market and you have to understand the market and respond to it. And that's kind of what I've tried to convey here. If you take that, I don't care where you are, use it wherever you are, it's going to only help you be more successful.
So, Dr. Andrew, this has been a wonderful conversation. You've built something that most physicians never attempt, a genuine business, not just a practice. And the fact that you're already thinking at the level of KPIs, recurring revenue, systems, first hiring, the AI adoption puts you in a very small category. Before I let you go, two things. First, where can the audience find you and learn more about Rejuvalife Vitality Institute?
Well, they can find me at Rejuvalife, which is our website. They can find me on Instagram, Andre Berger, MD, and Facebook, and I hope they like me. And our practice is in Beverly Hills, California, and we're on the Wilshire Boulevard, 9735 Wilshire Boulevard, 3417. And they can look me up there. I'm not hard to find.
And second, for any practice owner listening who are somewhere in the journey you described, maybe they're still in the volume chasing phase, you have put a good closing remarks. But if there's just one best piece of advice for where to start.
The number one thing, the mistake I made, which they don't have to make, and I think a very big lesson for everybody is don't ignore marketing. If the people don't know you exist, they're not going to benefit from your expertise. So you've got to devote a substantial amount of time, energy, and resources, especially when you're starting out. So don't ignore marketing.
So that's a very good advice, Dr. Andre. So that's a kind of clarity that only comes from, 40 plus years of staying in the room where it happens. Thank you for being on the SN podcast. This is the one I'll be recommending to every practice owner in my network. For our listeners, Geet Gera, founder of AISN Partners. If today's conversation surfaced any questions about how AI automation or what we can call answer engine optimization could work for your practice, visit aisnpartners.com or find me on LinkedIn. Until next time. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Andre.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have a great day.